Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Hit the Pace Car. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify, we would greatly appreciate a follow, comment, subscribe, do whatever you got to do. Share it even if you want to. That would be greatly appreciated. We have some topics to talk about this week, mainly referencing the weekend that we had in Circuit of the Americas and in St. Pete. But as every week, I am joined by my co hosts, Cory and Tyler. Cory, how are we doing today?
Doing great. Nothing like driving home from work and seeing some NASCAR haulers drive by you. Excited.
There you go. There you go. And of course, some of you may know that we do live in Arizona, so we will be going to Phoenix Raceway this weekend, maybe even film a little bit of content for the page and the social media. So keep an eye out for that. Maybe even hop on TikTok live at some point this weekend on the Pacecar Boys TikTok. And then, of course, my personal TikTok, Trackside Larry. Tyler, how are we doing today?
We're doing great, man. It's Phoenix weekend, and there's nothing I enjoy more. I love Phoenix. Phoenix is my track, personally.
Yeah, I like the facility of Phoenix Raceway. It hasn't necessarily put on the greatest racing, I'd say, but I think over the last year it's gotten a little bit better, and I think Goodyear is one of the main reasons for that. And we will talk more about Phoenix Raceway and the upcoming weekend a little bit later. But let's get into a couple of news stories before we get going on the weekend rundown from St. Pete and COTA. I got to start with this, and we're not really going to discuss this. We discussed this a little bit last week. It's an ongoing court case, NASCAR 2. Some of you may already know what I'm talking about, and I'm talking about Joe Gibbs and Joe Gibbs Racing versus Chris Gabehart. There's definitely been some drama brought into this with like the comments on Ty Gibbs apparently missing meetings. This is all allegedly, by the way. Like Ty Gibbs missing meetings and Chris Gabehart feeling like he's being undermined by Joe Gibbs and Heather Gibbs, and it's from what I've read and from what I've heard, it sounds like Chris Gabehart ended up leaving Joe Gibbs Racing, not necessarily because of Coach Gibbs. It seemed like he felt like that relationship would have been repairable, but he was mainly concerned about Heather Gibbs and Ty Gibbs. He really looked at that relationship between those two as being irreparable, and those two are going to be the future leaders of the race team. So I definitely understand that perspective. And we really saw a lot out of Chris Gabehart's perspective over the last week, and it kind of has my mind shifted a little bit on things for sure. Also hearing Kyle Busch's comments in his interview, not very, didn't really say much, but the fact that he didn't say much, you can read in between the lines with what Kyle Busch was saying in that interview, if any of you saw that interview. Well, pretty much what had happened over the last couple of days. On Friday, the judge gave an opportunity to both sides to come to some sort of arrangement, some sort of agreement. That way, the waters didn't get muddied on the whole situation, and both sides could potentially get hurt. Well, they didn't end up coming to some sort of arrangement, some sort of a agreement on the situation. So the judge had to make a ruling, and the judge did make a ruling on the situation, saying that Chris Gabehart, for now, is allowed to continue his role as chief motorsports officer at Spire Motorsports, as long as he's not doing the same duties or performing the same job as he was at Joe Gibbs Racing as the race director of the team. Well, there is another court case, so that could potentially be changed. There is an upcoming court case on March 16th. So let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about this NASCAR 2? We're going to try to give updates as we get them here on the Pacecar Boys channel. Also, check our shorts because we do post some shorts throughout the week, quick little news updates. So check those as well for Chris Gabehart versus Joe Gibbs Racing updates. All right. Update on NASCAR Full Speed. Some may be wondering, when are we getting the newest season of NASCAR Full Speed? Anybody that's watched the show for a while, I had a little bit of a rant last year about NASCAR Full Speed, how they did all the filming for Netflix for the playoffs for the 2024 season, and then released the show in the 2025 season. Well, what they did for the very first season of NASCAR Full Speed when they filmed the 2023 playoffs, they ended up premiering the episodes on Netflix like just before the Daytona 500, kind of to get everybody back into NASCAR, or people that have never watched NASCAR maybe to watch the Great American Race. It was just a good way to hype everybody up, I thought. Well, what they did last year, I forget exactly when they released it. I wanted to say they released the season in like late March. I'm going to be honest, I didn't bother watching it, mainly because we were around 6 months away. I mean, 6 months past when they filmed all of that. And it wasn't ahead of the Daytona 500, so I didn't really need the hype up or anything like that to get back into NASCAR. I really just thought it was a huge, huge error on whoever made that decision, whether that was NASCAR or Netflix or both. I personally thought that was just a huge, huge mistake on their part. Well, with NASCAR now having the relationship with Prime Video does their summer series, their 5 races in the middle of the season in the summer. They have that relationship now with them. It looks like they have moved NASCAR Full Speed from Netflix over to Amazon for the 3rd season. And then the 3rd season is going to be coming out here very, very soon. And instead of it covering the 2025 playoffs, they didn't film the 2025 playoffs. They instead filmed the 2026 Daytona 500 and some of the events leading up to the Daytona 500. So the fact that they're coming back maybe, probably a little over, once this comes out, around 2 months after the Daytona 500 and all the events, they've already edited it down and put it into episodes and stuff like that. I personally think this is a great move. I am curious on what the boys think about it. I definitely seen more people online upset about it compared to liking it, so I'm technically in the minority right now, and I get the other people's sentiment. They want the whole chase and the playoffs filmed and to watch all the drama and stuff that comes with that. Well, first of all, a lot of the drivers that were in the playoffs and in the chase didn't want to really be filmed and weren't really part of the programs. And then also, it's just so far removed when they released it on Netflix. They released it in like March, at the end of March, when the playoffs finished in the beginning of November. It's just such a far distance away from filming compared to when they actually released it. A lot of stuff that ends up happening in the show I just kind of forgot about and don't really care about anymore. So I personally think this is a good move doing the Daytona 500, and I think this is just a start and it's kind of a feeler. That's my prediction with Prime Video. I think they're kind of really, the reason they're releasing this so early is they're trying to find a feeler, see if this could be a popular thing on Amazon, not just with NASCAR fans, but with just fans of sports and documentaries in general. And maybe Prime Video decides to do one of these for the chase later on in the year. But I want to get the boys' thoughts on this because, like I said, I'm in the minority on this when it comes to looking on the internet. Most people were pretty fond of the previous version of NASCAR Full Speed, and they think it's kind of lame, using quotation marks there. Think it's kind of lame that they're only doing one race, but it's the Daytona 500 and leading up to the Daytona 500. But let's get the thoughts from the boys. We'll start with Tyler on this one. Tyler, I don't know if you ended up ever watching that last season of NASCAR Full Speed. I know I didn't, but what do you think about this move on moving NASCAR Full Speed over to Amazon and just covering the Daytona 500?
It definitely did try to catch a couple episodes, but like you said, the hype for that was really just over, so it wasn't worth my time at that point. There was other things I was invested in for that time period. But I think it's a great idea this time. I mean, when there's not going to be much drama like people think there is with the chase this year. Like, whoever set, when it comes down to that 16, it's going to be very clear on who the top four is going to be, and there's not going to be much drama with that, in my opinion. So I think leading up to the Daytona, there's a lot more drama. You have a lot more cars that are trying to race in. You have a lot more people that aren't even going to make the race, let alone everything else. So when it comes to drama, there'll be plenty of it. And Daytona have a lot more to offer than I think people realize, especially since they don't do speed weeks anymore. It doesn't make up for speed weeks by any means. I don't want a documentary for speed weeks, but it definitely will help with the disconnect a little bit, I think, with fans.
Like, one thing, I don't think they'll end up covering it just because he's not a very well-known driver, but I would really like to get a camera on Anthony Alfredo after he had made the Daytona 500 and then was told later, because he was so hyped up. He's been trying to make the Daytona 500 for the last couple of years, finally made the Great American Race just to fail post-race tech. I would also love to have a camera on BJ McLeod. Honestly, BJ McLeod, if he was a more well-known driver, I would like for him to have his own reality show. I love that guy. That guy is freaking awesome. But Cory, what are your thoughts on this, on NASCAR Full Speed moving over to Amazon to cover the Daytona 500?
I mean, it's hard not to be a little bit excited with how well Amazon did last year with their broadcast. So
Yeah.
you know that they have like an inside step of being successful with NASCAR, at least film wise. So that's one thing to be excited for. And then honestly, the same as what you and Tyler said. When it released in May, I don't think I really watched it until months later, just because there's nothing else that I was interested in watching. And even then, like all the buzz for it was gone. Like
Yeah.
I'm already watching racing every week. Why am I watching something that's 6, 7 months old at this point? It just wasn't entertaining because there was no, I don't know what's going to happen factor to it. And I think if the Daytona 500 episode hits, or like this series hits really well, that they could possibly expand it to doing something like the NASCAR Championship, and then maybe the NASCAR Crown Jewels, and make it like a series where they just do each Crown Jewel. But yeah, I'm excited. I think Amazon's going to do a good job.
Yeah, I think like I said, I think this is supposed to be some sort of feeler. They just kind of want to feel it out. I just think that's what it is, and see if they can maybe create their own version of Drive to Survive, and maybe just keep it for the Chafes. Or I like your suggestion too, Cory. Maybe at the beginning of the series, or maybe make it their own sort of special events with the crown jewels. That could be pretty interesting as well, like with the Brickyard, with the Southern 500. Maybe you can even throw Bristol in there, Coca-Cola 600. That could be pretty cool as well. I just overall think it's a good move, because NASCAR, that first season of NASCAR Full Speed on Netflix, I overall enjoyed it. I think the big problem I had with that very first season is that not a lot of drivers seemed to be down to do it. And then the second season, they just released it so late. They released it way after the Daytona 500, way after all the events that had happened in the chase, in the playoffs. And I just wasn't into it. I wasn't really interested in watching, so I never watched. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about NASCAR Full Speed moving over to Amazon Prime to cover the Daytona 500 and some of the events leading up to the Great American Race? Let's move on to the weekend rundown, where we run down all the events that we had over the NASCAR weekend. And of course, the NASCAR Cup Series and the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series were in Austin, Texas at Circuit of the Americas, a beautiful facility. And then the Craftsman Truck Series headed to St. Petersburg, Florida for the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg, to have a double weekend with the IndyCar series down there. So a very exciting weekend, I would say. I was pretty impressed actually about St. Pete. I didn't think that St. Pete was necessarily going to put on the greatest racing, but I was pleasantly surprised. So that will get us started. Let's move on to the Truck Series. That's what we'll start with here today. I overall enjoyed the race. I thought it was very entertaining. The Truck Series maybe should go back next year. I wouldn't be opposed to it, because overall I was pleasantly surprised. I personally shat on the idea of NASCAR going to St. Pete when we had the schedule release last year. Some of you may have saw that video when we had the schedule release. We were all, I think we were all kind of upset, because the Cup Series and the Rally Series is going to COTA, but then you're bringing the trucks to the streets of St. Petersburg. I thought it was the most random, most stupidest thing at the time, but I got to take some of that back. Because overall it was a very entertaining weekend. And if we didn't have the double, we wouldn't have had someone like Dario Franchitti or James Hinchcliffe in the field. And that's what I really want to start with talking about, is these special guests that we had in St. Pete for the Craftsman Truck Series. We had Dario Franchitti running out just outside the top 5, running in the top 10 most of the day. By the end of the day, his truck was pretty damaged, plus his body was completely worn out. You had Jimmy Hinch, James Hinchcliffe, who was running top 10 most of the day. He also got caught up in a couple of incidents and still managed to come back to get a top 10. You had Adam Andretti, who showed decent speed, but unfortunately got taken out by Christian Eckes fairly early on in the event. I feel like he would have gotten a top 15 if that didn't happen. And then Colin Braun was just methodically moving through the field all day, and that number 25 all-star colleague Ram machine, he looked pretty strong as well. He ended up getting a top 10 as well. And I want to get the boys' thoughts on this. I guess I'll start with Tyler on this one. Tyler, first of all, how did you feel about St. Pete and the special guests being at St. Pete? And then are there any of these drivers that really stood out to you?
It was definitely a cool race. I mean, the whole atmosphere was cool. The whole look of the entire track was cool, but I'm still iffy about separating the trucks from everybody else.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan of it. I just and the competition between these two series was a little bit too much for me. It just I get it. It was definitely cool. Like the guest drivers and all, that was definitely a cool experience. He definitely kept himself out there in the top, like you said, in the top. Showed he's got wheel talent, all of that. But he also showed that those NASCAR boys are a lot more in shape than people give them credit for. So that was definitely cool to see, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was cool watching Dario. You could tell near the end of that race. I don't know if any of you saw it, but they panned to his in-car camera, and he was just like grabbing his shoulder. He seemed like in some heavy discomfort. I'm pretty sure he even had an ice pack in there at one point, icing down his shoulder. He was clearly in a lot of pain because he hasn't been in a car for so long. He hasn't raced in a car for over 10 years, and you immediately get into a car, and it's not just like an Indy car at an oval or a not very difficult road course. It's at a very difficult street course in a vehicle he's not at all used to. So the balls on Dario Franchitti to even go out there and attempt it and then run top 10, top 5 pretty much all race long is extremely impressive. And he was the standout for me personally, was Dario. Like Jimmy Hinch, Braun, Andretti, they all did very well, but the standout for me had to be Dario Franchitti for sure. I want to see all 4 of these guys come back pretty soon. And you made a very good point there, Tyler, and that would probably be my big knock on the St. Petersburg event. I don't really like separating the series personally. I think the only time I'm okay with them separating the series is if they're racing a track that's also local to the main track, like what they do with Indianapolis weekend when they go to Indianapolis Raceway Park. I'm personally a fan of that. I like that because that you can still keep your competitive pit stops. Plus, it promotes the area. Like people can go to that Truck Series race and be like, "Oh man, that was a great time." Well, the really good drivers are going to be at the big oval at Indianapolis Motor Speedway in 2 days. You should go to that race too. And they're like, "Yeah, I'm gonna buy tickets." So I personally like that. So I guess that would probably be my big knock on it. And also, I'd rather go to Road America. That's my other big knock on it. But Cory, how do we feel about St. Pete and our special guests that we had in St. Pete? Are there any of them that really stood out to you over the others?
That was my first time watching a race at St. Pete, and I was
Okay.
impressed. I thought it was a beautiful course. I thought the trucks did well there. I thought it was a good visual, good watch as a fan. And then I think you hit the nail on the head with the Dario Franchitti talk. Like watching him just stay around the top 5 all day was super impressive. And then obviously you saw the pain he was going through, like if you watched the whole race, and he clearly wasn't having the most fun, but he was still
He was still
being
having fun,
super
but not having
competitive.
fun.
Correct. Yeah, and you saw, and then nothing was like seeing him, Jimmy Johnson, just be next to
Mario
each other
Andretti.
after the race, like, and yeah, exactly. It's like having all of them there, like, what an iconic like moment for NASCAR in general. But I agree with what you and Tyler have said. Like, I'm not a fan of them splitting the series to different locations in the same weekend. Like, it's just like if I buy a ticket or if I want to see all the 3 races for a weekend, or how do I better say it? I say, like,
Keep
if
them
all
local.
3 series are racing, I want to be able to see them in person, like that whole weekend. Like, that's kind of the perk of NASCAR too, is to be able to watch all of the series. So having 2 in one location and 1 on the other side of the country is kind of shit. And I mean, but that's nothing against St. Pete. That's just bad scheduling.
Yeah, and they really wanted to get this double in for IndyCar, and then we have another IndyCar double this next week, back-to-back IndyCar doubles. I find that pretty interesting with Phoenix this upcoming weekend. And yeah, that would probably be my big knock on it too. I just feel like if they're all racing, they should either all be racing at the same racetrack or at least racing locally, like they're in the same sort of vicinity within like I don't know, like 100 miles of each other or something. Like, I like what they do with Indianapolis Motor Speedway and IRP, Indianapolis Raceway Park. I really like what they end up doing for those races. And I wouldn't, because I've said it on this channel many times, I want the Truck Series to go to a lot more short tracks, because that's what the Truck Series was built off back when it was the Craftsman Super Trucks Series. That's what it was built off of, just race. They used to race in here in Tucson. Like, I don't know if either you know that, but the Truck Series used to race at Tucson Speedway and stuff like that. It used to race at just short tracks. And I would love for the Truck Series to get back to that. And I've kind of given up hope on that. I don't think it's going to ever happen. So I'm just kind of going with the flow. And overall, I enjoyed St. Petersburg weekend as a whole. I watched the IndyCar Series race as well. That was a very good race. And honestly, the track is a lot more spacious than I thought it would be. It's a street course, but it was a little more spacious and more passing zones than I honestly expected for the Truck Series. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. Are there any of the special guests from St. Pete, whether it's Dario Franchitti, James Hinchcliffe, Adam Andretti, or Colin Braun, that ended up standing out to you? And overall, how did you feel about the St. Pete weekend with the trucks and the IndyCar Series sharing the same street course? All right, let's get to the end of this race, and then we'll move on to the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. It seemed like to me that Ty Majeski probably would have won this race. Around 20 laps to go, he made a pretty bad mistake on the last corner coming to the start finish line. I think they're about to come to 18 or 9. It was around 20 laps to go, something like that. And lost a little bit control, overdrove the corner, went out into the dirt, gave up some spots and a lot of time, gave up the lead to Lane Riggs, and Majeski eventually drove down Lane Riggs, but by the time he was close enough, it was already too late. He even tried to send it into the last corner on the last lap. Looked like he tried to just at least give him a little bump, and he just wasn't quite close enough. If there was one lap remaining, I think Ty Majeski probably, if there was one more lap, one extra lap to this race, I do think Ty Majeski probably would have won this race. But I know who actually won this race, and that was Lane Riggs. And a hell of a celebration from Lane Riggs. He burnt it down in pretty much every single corner of that racetrack. I've never seen him celebrate that hard since he dislocated his shoulder at Gateway. That was the last time I saw him celebrate that hard. I was very happy for him. I really like Lane Riggs, and I think he's deserving to move up to the next division, whether that's the O'Reilly Series or the Cup Series. I think he is ready to move up to one of those two divisions. But I want to get the boys' thoughts on this. I guess I'll start with Tyler. How did we feel about the end of that race with Ty Majeski, and how did we feel about Lane Riggs getting of his first victory of the season, actually?
It was definitely an intense ending there. I was out in the yard doing some weeds and had to stop everything I was doing to run over and see what the hell was going on, because it was definitely an intense ending there. It was cool to see Riggs pull it off, man. That guy he's been working his ass off for a minute, so always cool to see him pull it in victory lane.
Yeah, I like Riggs. I think Lane Riggs is a very talented driver. And even though his dad is Scott Riggs, I wouldn't consider him one of those like Nepo babies or something like that. He really had to
No.
work. No, not at all. He had to work really hard and get get his opportunities. He didn't have opportunities really handed out to him. He's not necessarily, this is no offense to Lane Riggs, he's not necessarily social media savvy. You don't really see him posting really at all on social media, and he doesn't have all these big sponsorships and stuff. He got to where he is purely on skill, which we don't see all that often. Cory, what were your thoughts on the end of this race? Ty Majeski essentially choking, in my opinion, and Lane Riggs having a hell of a celebration.
It was interesting. I think you had the best two cars on the day end up being fighting for the win, which is all we can ask for as fans, right? And what Lane Riggs started like 28th and won the race. It was just he pulled
He
an
drove through the
excellent
field,
race,
yeah.
and exactly. So I know it was just a great race, and I think all of us here are fans of Lane Riggs, so it's good to see him be successful. I think we all think he's a championship contender this year. So yeah, no, it's good to see him pulling off so early in the year.
Yeah, it's good to see Lane Riggs get a win so early in the year. And what a start by Front Row Motorsports in the Truck Series, and what a start from 2311 in the Cup Series. I know there's people with tinfoil hats on right now when it comes to the whole Reddick situation, but no one's talking about Front Row Motorsports in the trucks. There's no tinfoil hats on for that. I don't know. But what a performance from Lane Riggs, getting the win at St. Pete. A hell of a celebration. I'm surprised he made it back to victory lane with how much he was celebrating. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about the race at St. Pete? Majeski essentially choking, in my opinion. Probably would have won that race if they had one extra lap. But also tell me about how you felt about Lane Riggs winning that race and his celebration. All right, let's move on to the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series part of this discussion, as the O'Reilly Series ended up heading to Circuit of the Americas, Austin, Texas, at COTA this past weekend. And it looked like at the beginning of this race, we were going to have Zilisch versus Shane versus Zilisch. It looks like that's what we were going to have all race long. I thought we were going to have something very similar to what we had in the O'Reilly Series last season at Sonoma, which was, I was there in person. That was an awesome race purely because I was just watching those two drivers go back and forth all race long. It was freaking awesome to watch those two. And it looked like we were going to have that again on Saturday, but Zilisch obviously had some issues throughout the day. We'll talk about SVG in a minute, but no, SVG didn't really have any other heavy hitter challengers, I would say. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But Zilich's troubles really came to a head at near the end of this event when he got taken out by pretty much a teammate in Corey Day. And Corey Day, his struggles have been noted over the last couple of weeks. They were noted in his couple of races that he had last season. And I wasn't a big fan of his interview. I liked the way he finished his interview and the way he reacted online on X. If you didn't see the incident, pretty much what had happened right before they came into the S's, they came down from the hairpin into that little kink right before they get into the S's. Corey Day just came all the way up, came all the way to the left, came all the way to the very edge of the racetrack, and just flat out took out Connor Zilisch. Corey Day was trying to blame it on his car. He even said when Zilisch came across my nose, he was having a really bad interview. I forget who it was that actually interviewed him. I can't remember right now who interviewed him on pit road, but she kind of pointed him in the right direction. I felt like in the interview, like, hey, don't you want to apologize or something? Like that's pretty much the vibe that she was giving him, I felt like. And by the end of the interview, I think he came around a little bit. And then right after that interview, he obviously hopped on X and really saw what everybody was saying. And I really liked the message that he had on X saying, yeah, I know I've screwed up the past couple of weekends. I'm going to work to get better. I have a lot of people to apologize to and this and that. So I really appreciate that. And maybe this is Corey Day turning the corner, because he definitely is very skillful. If anybody watched my Car on the Hauler, my post-race show on my YouTube channel, Trackside Larry, last week, post-Atlanta, I talked a good amount about Corey Day. I even made a separate video talking about Corey Day and how he's just been in NASCAR so far, because he made some big mistakes and wrecked some cars in Atlanta and didn't take any accountability in Atlanta for anything that he really did. And I'm glad that he's taken some accountability. He ended up getting a top 5, so he definitely has some speed. But I want to get the boys' thoughts on this, not just on the incident, but on Corey Day in general. I guess I'll start with Tyler on this one. Uh, how did you feel about that incident between Corey Day and Connor Zilisch? I thought it was one of the dumbest incidents ever. It was 120% Corey Day's fault. And then also, how do you feel about Corey Day in general?
It was definitely an unfortunate incident. Man, it was stupid as hell, but it was unfortunate because, like you said, he had just had all these run-ins at Atlanta. The dude's just getting into racing. The last thing he wants is to be known as that guy, right? I don't think at any point he's trying to wreck cars or anything else. It's just he's not being calm enough. He's not relaxing. He's not giving it time. He needs to be right around in the back of the pack, get used to things, get used to the way the car drives, all of that. He's just not really doing that. He's going head in and just I can race these cars, and he's not what he thinks he is right now, and it's not working out well for him.
Yeah, anybody that ended up watching my car in the hauler, I kind of talked about what you just talked about a little bit more in depth, Tyler, because I just really think that Corey Day is just mentally stuck in that dirt racer's mindset. And when you race dirt, whether it's sprint cars or late models or whatever, every single lap you're going 120% because the races are so short. You're probably not going to have to make any pit stops unless something is deathly wrong with your vehicle or a tire or something like that. You're going 120% every single lap. You're going as hard as every lap's a qualifying lap in dirt racing. And I remember when Kyle Larson first came into the sport, I don't think he was doing it to the extreme like Corey Day was, but I saw a lot of the same things that Larson did back then than what I'm seeing with now Corey Day. It's almost like a mirror image that I'm seeing. Maybe not as talented as Larson. Maybe he's doing a little bit more extreme or even worse stuff than Larson, but it's very comparable to what Larson did when he first came into the sport. And we still see Kyle Larson make some of those dirt racing mentality sort of mistakes. Like they call him hung money because he stepped on his dick. Like we've seen him do it. We've seen Larson do it. He's obviously not nearly as bad as he used to be when it came to those sort of errors. So I think Corey Day is just stuck in that dirt racer mindset. And I also look at the reason, because I think a lot of people are also wondering, why does he have such a long leash? Why is he able to do all this stuff? Well, a lot of people remembered when Jeff Gordon brought in this not very known driver named Jimmy Johnson. I think this is a very, very similar situation to that. But instead of Jeff Gordon, it's Kyle Larson. Instead of Jimmy Johnson, is Corey Day. Corey Day is Kyle Larson's Jimmy Johnson. No matter how stupid that may sound right now, that is true. That's his prodigy. That's the guy he wants to be the owner of. But Corey, I know you're a pretty big fan of Corey Day, mainly because you are a big fan of Larson. Also, you guys share the same name. But I know you like Corey Day. But give me your opinion on Corey Day, on how everything has gone so far, and how did you overall feel about that incident with Connor Zilisch at COTA?
Man, he's definitely had a rough couple of weeks. The incident at COTA is definitely his fault. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He messed up, and he almost didn't take credit for it at the end of the
Exactly.
race, but he got pushed into the right corner. Um, I just think everyone needs to remember he's 20 years old with what, a year of truck experience now, maybe, and that doesn't really
Only a
help you
couple
except
races,
for
really.
how to. Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, exactly. A couple of races of truck experience, which doesn't really help you too much besides how to wreck. And then, but 20 years old with the biggest expectations in the world on your shoulders. Like, we need to remember that. Like, yeah, he might have a longer leash than some. We don't really know that yet. But, like, walking into NASCAR with the best driver in the world supporting you and being his guy, like, just imagine the stress or like everything he's thinking about with knowing that. So I know I'm more lenient on him. I think you saw me react to the interview he was giving. I'm like, oh, you're digging yourself a hole you might not be able to come out of. And he got helped a lot at the end of it by, I don't know her name,
Yeah, I
but
forget her name.
got pushed into the right corner and then doubled down on how he ended that interview on X, you know. So like he he is going to go through some rough patches. It's just been very quick to dig a hole in the Xfinity series this year.
Yeah, and something that I think that's very true when it comes to NASCAR fans, they really hold a grudge over a driver, and I think we're all guilty of that with this guy named Austin Hill. You know, Austin Hill, he does some bitching and whining, and he can be very hypocritical, but I think that's a lot of people. I'm just using Austin Hill as an example. We look past all the amazing things about Austin Hill because we hang on to the things that he does so poorly, so tightly, including myself. I'm not. I try to come around on Austin Hill mainly because I'm a big fan of Sheldon Creed. So I try to come around to Austin Hill, and I try my best, but it doesn't always work out. But NASCAR fans really hold grudges. Like, people hated Kyle Busch and still hate Kyle Busch mainly because he wrecked Dale Earnhardt Jr. at Richmond, what, almost 20 years ago now? Like 15 years ago that happened? And people still hate Kyle Busch's guts over that. And that's how NASCAR fans are. NASCAR fans are extremely loyal, whether it's through love or through hate. They're extremely, extremely loyal, whichever way you look at it. And I'm really hoping this is a turning point for Corey Day, because I don't think it's too late for him to change minds on people, especially since he is a Hendrick Motorsports driver and is essentially probably the one waiting in the wings as long as he does well enough. I personally think Raja should be put above Corey Day in on that totem pole, but I think Rick Hendrick looks at it a little bit different. I think if Corey Day has a very, very successful season this year, I think there is a good chance we see him in the number 48 car next year, and that's just my opinion. If we see him have a kick-ass year, maybe he can do that. So I think there is some time for Corey Day still to turn it around, and I'm hoping. I really liked. I loved. I think I shared it with both you guys. I really loved that X post he made because that showed some maturity. He took some accountability, and hopefully that's him turning the corner. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about Corey Day in general, how he's performed over the last couple of weeks and so far in his very short NASCAR career? And then, most importantly, how did you feel about that incident with Connor Zilisch? Let me know. All right, let's move on to our winner. Honestly, there's probably not going to be a lot to talk about because we had a huge surprise as our winner. I didn't expect it. I don't think anybody did. It was Shane Van. Oh yeah, no, everybody expected that. My bad. Shane Van Gisbergen and SVG ended up winning the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race, and he just didn't really have any competition really all race long for the most part. Zilisch, I'd say, was a pretty good challenger at the start. Sam Mayer honestly showed a lot of speed. I thought he was probably going to be his biggest contender. Sam Mayer didn't get the finish he probably deserved. Sheldon Creed, I think Sheldon Creed showed really good speed, and maybe if his power steering didn't fail, he may have competed for the win as well. And I got to give my flowers very quickly to Sheldon Creed. He ended up driving to an 11th place finish with no power steering, which is insanely impressive. So good job on Sheldon. But SVG was just perfect all day. The only mistake he made all day long was he couldn't punt the rugby ball over the fence. That was the only thing that he didn't do right all race long. And right when I was watching the race with my dad, I used to play goalkeeper in soccer, so I know that look. Right when his foot hit the ball, he immediately looked at the ball like he shanked it. He immediately looked at the ball like he shanked it. I know that look. I was like, yep. I said it aloud. I was like, yep, he's not making that over the fence. And he did not. He did not make it over the fence. And my big question is, what happened to that rugby ball? Did it get thrown over the fence later? Did it get brought back to the hauler? Did they just leave it there? Like, I'm also curious about that. But I'm curious what the boys thought about Shane Van Gisbergen just kicking all sorts of ass. The Kiwi, that's all he really does at these road courses for the most part. Cory, I'll start with you on this one. How did we feel about SVG getting another victory? And are any of the drivers I mentioned earlier, whether it's Creed, Mayer, or Zilisch, who do you think could have been his biggest contender?
Man, I think SV or not SVG. I think Connor Zilisch would have been made this race more interesting if he didn't have the troubles he had to go through, and then Cory Day he had to go through.
Yeah.
But like you said, Sheldon Creed had no power steering and finished 11th. That's awesome. I mean, impressive. But the Sam Mayer looked promising at times. Austin Hill is
Austin Hill, I forgot about
surprisingly
him. Yeah.
really good at road courses. He
That's
doesn't
his
get enough
third, second
credit for
place
that.
there.
Yep. And then honestly, it's hard not to love SVG. Like even when he finished second on Sunday, he's going and celebrating with Tyler Reddick. When he wins the race, he's so happy and proud. When he finishes second, he's so happy just to be there and have a good time. Like I I heard that he just came to NASCAR because it was more competitive, and he's kicking ass. And even when he's not winning, he's just always happy. So SVG is quickly becoming one of my favorites.
Yeah, I just love his attitude. No matter what happens in the race, he almost finishes off every interview. He gives that look like, "Oh, I had fun." Like that's just what
Yeah.
every interview he really gives. He could finish like 30th place, just flip the car over like 5 or 6 times, which hasn't happened yet, but honestly, if he went to Daytona or Talladega or something and he all of a sudden went flying through the air and flipped a bunch of times, as long as he didn't get hurt, I could see him getting out of the car. Well, that was a fun ride, wasn't it? I can see him giving like a Cletus almost interview after that. I love the guy, Shane Van Gisbergen. He's probably my favorite personality in the sport right now. Actually, no, maybe Noah Gragson. Actually, I'll probably put him below Noah. The only reason a lot of people might not say Noah is because Noah's not necessarily usually having great finishes, so he's not usually doing interviews and doing all this other stuff. But I really like Noah's personality as well. But Shane's right there. I love the guy, and I love seeing him have success. I'm perfectly fine with it. But Tyler, how did we feel about SVG just kicking all sorts of ass once again? And any of those drivers I named really stand out to you throughout the day?
Well, like you guys have said, man, the guy came in here to pretty much just dominate, and that's what he's been doing. So at the end of the day, it's been fun to watch. It's been fun to watch, but it's not surprising by any means. The guy's out there just purely to have fun, like he says over and over again, and you can see that. It's cool to see. The guys are all learning from him. It's not like it's a waste of time for anybody. He's learning with the pace, and can't really beat that. I mean, everybody really had a really good day on Saturday, in my opinion. It was a really good race to watch.
Honestly, I enjoyed all 3 races that we had. I thought both COTA races and St. Pete were good races. A lot of people shit talk COTA. I feel like that's just because they just don't like road courses at all. But in my opinion, Circuit of the Americas is the most entertaining road course that NASCAR goes to right now. They don't go to Road America right now, or Road America would be number 1. But Circuit of the Americas, in my opinion, right now is the most entertaining road course on the NASCAR schedule, especially in the Cup Series, because I love Watkins Glen. That might be my favorite, but with this generation of car, it's almost impossible to pass or really do anything because it's such a fast racetrack. And Sonoma's never been that great of a racetrack. I still enjoy Sonoma. I traveled out there last year for the Sonoma race. But COTA just always puts on a good show. That's just my opinion. I think it always puts on a good show. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did we feel about Shane Van Gisbergen getting another victory in the O'Reilly Series, this time at Circuit of the Americas? All right, let's move on to the NASCAR Cup Series as we had the Duramax Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas this weekend. An overall very entertaining race. I think there was some heavy hitters throughout the day, like Ryan Blaney. He really pleasantly surprised me. I don't think Blaney is much of a road course racer, and he was extremely fast. Maybe if Jonathan Hassler made a different call to get tires, and I thought that was the race-winning call. I heard Larry Mack talking right before those last pit stops, like, oh, everybody should probably stay out here. And I'm like, no, Larry, everybody should pit. These tires actually mean something here. And I think if Ryan Blaney and Jonathan Hassler came down pit road, I think they could have competed for the win, but I guess we'll never know. But another driver that I think could have competed for the win and passed more cars than anybody all race long was Connor Zilisch, who even on pit road in an interview with, I think PRN was the interview with, he said he probably had his best race ever and he finished 14th. He raced his ass off. He raced his way to the front, got spun out by his former teammate, Daniel Suarez. I'm having my tinfoil hat on a little bit right now, and this comes from a Daniel Suarez fan. Is Daniel Suarez wrecking these Trackhouse guys on purpose? I don't know. Took out Connor Zilisch. Then later on in the race, he gets back to the front, and then Connor Zilisch looked like he had PTSD, in my opinion, going into turn one, because everybody's door to door coming into turn one, and Connor Zilisch is like 10 or 15 feet away from everybody else, all the way up high, just by far the highest up on the racetrack, and he still gets taken out. Drives back to get a top 15 finish. So a no good, very bad day for Connor Zilisch, but still managed to get a top 15 finish. So an overall impressive day. And I want to start with Cory on this one, because Cory ended up picking Connor Zilisch in our weekly picks. I personally was debating between Shane and Zilisch, and I just wasn't going to let him pick Shane again, so I ended up picking Shane, but my heart was picking Zilisch. My heart was saying Zilisch. And Zilisch, honestly, probably would have competed for. I think he would have at least gotten second. I think at bar minimum, he would have gotten second. I don't know if he would have been able to take down Tyler Reddick, but I think Zilisch would have at least gotten second if he didn't have everything happen to him all day. Because at one point, he was more than a half second quicker than the whole entire field. But Cory, how did you feel about Zilich's day as a whole, and him still managing to come back to get a top 15?
Man, that race, I was watching or listening to his in-car audio like most of that race. So I get how some people could be bored with the COTA race, but watching Connor Zilisch go through the field, 3 times, was the most entertained I've been at a road course in a long time. Because he was definitely, I think half a second's an understatement. Before that last caution, he started off like 11 or 12 seconds back at one point, and went from, I don't know, I think it was like late 20s all the way up to 12th, he went from like 22nd to 12th in like 10 laps, and then, or 5 laps. Then next thing you know, he's 9th, 8th. He's like top, like passing McDowell, who's a road course expert, and being half a second, I think 6/10 faster than the leader for like 3 or 4 second consecutive laps while passing people. And I don't know, I was just in awe. Like, we thought we'd see that. Like, he was proving that he's going to compete with SVG for wins in the Cup Series at road courses. And man, that second time where he got wrecked by Denny and that, domino effect, man, he was raced all the way up to third. And then I was watching, he had PTSD to not get hit again. And my TV's delayed. I heard the audio go, stay there, just fire it up, just go. And I'm just like, oh no, like it happened again. But Connor Zilisch is gonna be great, and he's gonna be fantastic at road courses. I can't wait to watch him at the next one.
Yeah, because I want to say the next one is I forget if San Diego comes first or Sonoma comes first. I know they're in back-to-back weeks. So that will end up being the next time we'll see him at a road course, and I expect him to compete for the win. And I personally expect Zilisch to compete for wins on ovals before the end of the year. I'm not sitting here saying he's going to win on an oval this year, but I expect him to be running in the top 5 at a couple of ovals before the end of the season. Like, one track I would really eye near the end of the year is Martinsville. Like, that's one I would definitely eye. Like, Bristol, I could see. Gateway, Worldwide Technology Raceway, I could see him potentially competing there. Maybe even Indianapolis or Pocono. Like, I could see that as well. So just something to watch out for with Zilisch. But Tyler, how did we feel about Connor Zilich's no good, very bad day?
Watkins Glen is next, by the way, May 10th.
Oh, okay. I didn't know it was in May.
Man, I felt bad for Connor because he definitely, like he said, he drove definitely the best race he's driven probably ever. Like, we watched him pass cars within laps, and I mean cars, not just a car, but cars at a lap at a time, and it was wild to watch. So if you watched anything that he did last year, feel like most of us had an inkling this is kind of what was coming, but I don't think any of us knew it would be so fast that he'd be this good. If it wasn't for other people on that track that were just dicking around, I don't think he would have had as half as a bad day as he did. So he
Agreed.
would have been up there competing for a win for sure. So I mean, I'm excited to see what the future holds. The man makes road course racing interesting. I think that he should never be allowed to be on the pole. I think every race he should be required to start in the back, and that's just for entertainment value because he's guaranteed to get to the front.
Yeah, because I remember when I went to COTA last season and it was his first career Cup Series start when he was driving the number 87 instead of the 88. I remember him in that race. It was honestly almost a mirror image of this race. He didn't get as good of a finish last year. He ended up, I think he exited the race early because of damage, but he had to go through the same sort of issues. He got wrecked in turn one. He started the race in a really bad position, didn't do well in qualifying, had to drive through the field a couple of times. But I think the only difference between that race and this race is that that last incident ended up taking him out of the race. I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure he finished behind the wall in last year's event. But yeah, Zilisch, he's a show. Connor Zilisch puts on a show. He's a fantastic road course racer, and he's going to be the guy challenging Shane Van Gisbergen. And then Cory corrected me right there that it's actually Watkins Glen in May will be the next time they go to a road course. And Watkins Glen I would consider probably the one road course on our schedule right now where a road course ringer like Shane or Zilisch might not win that race just because of how that racetrack is. Like we saw Chris Buescher, and Chris Buescher is a really good road course racer as well. He's done really well on the road courses, but I wouldn't consider him one of the best in the series, and he was able to get the job done there. I think, 2 years ago or 3 years ago, SVG ended up winning there last year. So we'll have to see how that works out. So I can definitely see Zilisch getting the job done there. If some of you may remember, he ended up making his first start in the O'Reilly series at Watkins Glen, and he won. He won that race. So maybe he can get the job done at Watkins Glen here in around 2 months from now, a little over 2 months from now. We'll have to see if he can get the job done. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about Connor Zilich's no good, very bad day? All right, let's move on to something else that had a really bad day, and that was Cool Suits. Cool Suits had a very bad day in Circuit of the Americas. We had a couple of Cool Suit failures that we know of. There was probably some more that didn't necessarily get mentioned. I know that Kyle Larson had some issues with his Cool Suit. I still haven't really seen any confirmation that Alex Bowman's Cool Suit failed, so we could potentially be wrong about that, but I've heard other people mention that they think it was his Cool Suit that failed, and he was also pretty sick, so he ended up having to leave the race. And Myatt Snyder, what a great story that was, by the way, seeing Myatt Snyder go out there. I can't wait to hear Myatt's story or somebody really talk about that some more, because he wasn't made available for media afterwards, which I found pretty weird, but that's probably just Hendrick not wanting a non-Hendrick guy speaking. I think Jeff Gluck made that point, and that's a very fair point. But nonetheless, we saw a lot of issues with the Cool Suits, and the biggest one was probably with AJ Allmendinger, who had not just his Cool Suit fail, but also his helmet with the AC, that all the cool air that pushes into his helmet also failed. So instead of it pushing in cool air, it was pushing hot air into his helmet. And I personally consider Dinger to be one of the most physically fit NASCAR Cup Series drivers. He's always running, he's always riding a bike, he's always doing something. And for him to get out of the car and pretty much collapse next to the car in a very scary scene, I said it in my Car on the Hauler post-race show that Fox cut to him, and honestly, Fox needed to do a better job about stuff like that, because they were showing Tyler Reddick's celebration, then really quickly cut to AJ Allmendinger, and then cut back and didn't really say anything about AJ Allmendinger. I was going through the Reddit comments for the post-race discussion, and almost every comment was like, damn, I thought AJ died, or like, damn, Fox fucked up, or like this, that. It's like, especially since AJ has his helmet on. He didn't even take his helmet off. He was just lying on the ground. A very, very scary scene, and he was on the ground for a couple of minutes. They eventually ended up putting him on a stretcher, and it seemed like he just needed fluids. He just needed to get an IV. There was even a picture he posted on his X later on in the day with his arm bandaged up where they would usually put in an IV when he was talking to Chris Wright and Matt Collig after the race. So he ended up being okay. I just think he was very, very, very dehydrated at the end of that event. But I think Fox does need to get better at that sort of stuff. If you're going to show a guy pretty much dying on the ground, at least explain a little bit what's going on. Maybe give some updates before you decide to end the programming. Just a little note there as well. But the main thing to talk about is these cool suits and why they're failing. This was the first hot race really of the season. It wasn't the hottest race. They were in like the mid 80s most of the day. It's still pretty warm out there. But why are we having these cool suits fail? I personally would never wear one just because they're not very reliable. They fail. I wouldn't say 50% of the time. I saw some people trying to say that, and definitely not 50% of the time, but 1 out of every 10 times, 1 out of every 9 times it fails. And even though that's the case, like 10% versus 50%, that's still not very reliable. And you can get seriously hurt. Like I think it was, Brent Cruz, I think, was saying it on Door Bumper Clear that he knew somebody that actually got third-degree burns because of their cool suit failing and the water heating up. So we need to fix these cool suits. We really need to fix these cool suits. A company needs to come up and figure it out. I guess we'll start with Tyler on this one. Tyler, how are we feeling about the cool suits? Because the cool suits, I think, are becoming a real problem.
They've been a problem. I mean, these cool suits have not these exact cool suits, but these cool suits have been around since the 80s. I mean, you had people like Mark Martin that wore them back then, wore them once or twice and said it almost killed him, and he never did it again. So, I mean, the fact that we've had these devices around for 30, 40 years and we haven't found a way for them to actually properly work consistently is kind of terrifying. Honestly, it should be a safety caution. If one of these guys' suits stop working, they need to be able to be pulled down track, get the suit off, get the water stop running through their suit, and
Red
figure
flag
it
it.
out. I mean, red flag it. It's 100% no
I like
different
that.
than somebody's neck harness not being right, no somebody's harness not being buckled down right. All of these things, it's a safety caution. Bring them down, figure it out. It's like you said, it's not like it's a 50-50 chance. We're talking maybe like 25% of the time these cool suits fail, but when they fail, it's a detrimental thing. It needs to be, and you have people like AJ that are highly, highly competitive. That man's not just going to pull off the grid and just stop running his car because he's a little warm. I mean, obviously it's more than a little warm, but that's what he's seeing in that moment because he's highly competitive. He's not going to stop until he's dying. And unfortunately, in that instance, he didn't stop until he literally had to be pulled out of the car and we were looking at him laying on the ground on the pavement. It was absolutely terrifying. Fox did a horrible job out letting us know. I mean, you had, I think, Jamie Little or somebody be like, "We think he's good. He gave us a thumbs up." But like that meant nothing. That meant absolutely nothing once you seen the images of him laying on the ground and us knew what was going on. I mean, you had Alex Bowman get so sick in the car because of, I believe it was believed to be his cool suit as well, that he had to be pulled out of the car and replaced. So the cool suit thing really needs to be figured out. And if they can't figure it out, pull the boys down, get him out of the suit, and get the race going again. It's not like they can't just pull the suit off and keep going.
I really like your take there, right there, Tyler. I like the idea of having a safety caution or a safety stoppage, if you will. Just bring everybody down pit lane, and if someone has to switch out their cool suit or just take off their cool suit due to safety concerns, they can. I think there probably would be some sort of debate if they should get their spot back or not, or have to go to the end of the longest line, or whatever the case may be. That's all semantics, but I like that take. I like some sort of safety caution, or because we do that for other safety concerns like rain and stuff like that, or lightning or thunder or stuff like that. So I like that. I think that's a pretty good idea. But Cory, how do you feel about these cool suits? What do you think the future is for these cool suits in NASCAR?
I think it's definitely a big issue at this point. I mean, I don't know what the percentage is, even if it's sub 10%, but it's a huge safety issue. It's one of the biggest safety issues in NASCAR. And obviously this wasn't what really happened, but my dad, I guess, must have heard something different. He saw the camera glimpse to him laying on the ground, and he heard someone say, "Is he breathing?" Like that's what my dad came to the stairs and was like, "Did you hear what they said?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He thought it was a lot more serious than it was.
Exactly.
But Fox led us on that way because of the terrible camera managing that they did in that little glimpse. So that was annoying. And but I agree with mostly what Tyler said. I could never ever. It's a good idea. I could never see them doing it just because NASCAR is a competition. It's whether it's right or wrong. It's a competition. It's
Yeah.
gonna get too far. It's gonna get to too far of a point before they actually get ahead of it and do a competition caution or something like that, or a safety caution. It's it. I don't know. NASCAR's never been preemptive like that far ahead, especially like stopping a race because one driver might be having an issue. Like, I don't know. You get in a lot of people's way. Like if you have a 10-second lead and you call a caution, like it'd look like a debris caution even if it was a safety concern.
Yeah, I get that take as well. Like, I like the idea of them stopping the race real quickly to fix somebody's cool suit, because especially on like a really hot day, like if we get like during one of these summer races that we'll have obviously here in a couple of months. But I get what you're saying as well, Corey. I don't know if NASCAR would be down to do something like that because it is a competition. And one thing I personally would be worried about is people possibly taking advantage of the cool suit rule, I guess you could say. Like maybe 5 laps to go, somebody's teammate is like way back on the leader and they're like, oh, my cool suit's failing, throw a caution, And I'm worried about.
I could see them doing it. I could see them allowing a car not to lose a spot during a, a stage caution. Like saying, but you obviously have no crew members getting out of the car unless it's somebody helping him take his harness off. Like you, like that situation. But it would be like that. I don't know. They'd have to make it to where obviously no cars are being touched. How are they not losing a lap? Are they, you know what I mean? Something like that.
Mhm.
Like, but I could see them doing it during normal cautions. But they would. I don't see them ever like stopping a race for one person.
That would be a nice middle ground. Like maybe they do something like this. If someone has a cool suit fail, maybe during a stage break or the next caution, once they come down pit road, and if they decide to change their cool suit, they might lose all their positions, but don't have them lose a lap. Maybe keep them on the lead
Mm.
lap or keep them 1 lap down or something like that. Because I think that's one of the reasons you're not going to see a lot of people get out of the car if they have that cool suit, because they know if they get out of the car and either change their cool suit or get a replacement driver in the car, they're probably going to be multiple laps down and they're going to be out of any sort of chance of getting a really good finish. So that, I think that could be a very good middle ground. I like that idea as well, Corey. There's some good ideas coming out of this segment here. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about cool suits currently in NASCAR, and what do you think the future is for cool suits in NASCAR? Let me know in the comments. All right, let's get down to the end of this race, as we had Tyler Reddick win 3 straight, but he had to hold off Shane Van Gisbergen for at least a little bit. SVG was putting some pressure on at one point with around 15 laps to go. He was putting some pressure on. Eventually, I think his rear tires just really fell off and he just began to drop back. Ended up finishing almost 4 seconds, roughly around 4 seconds behind Tyler Reddick. And then Tyler Reddick ended up going on to make NASCAR history, being the first driver in Cup Series history to win the first 3 races of the regular season by winning the Daytona 500, winning at Echo Park, and now winning at Circuit of the Americas. What a start to the year. I loved Michael Jordan's interview on pit road as well. It sounded like his plan was not to go to Phoenix, but just because Reddick won that race, he's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna be in Phoenix. I'm gonna go to Phoenix. I can't wait." Like he seemed so giddy. I loved the camera work on that interview was excellent. First of all, I assume the cameraman is walking backwards, like he's walking backwards as Jamie Little is interviewing Michael Jordan walking down pit lane. And then also, right when they stop the interview, to follow Michael Jordan as he jogs away like a little kid to go celebrate was freaking awesome. I even liked Bo with the whole thing. Bo was hilarious. If anybody was watching Tyler's oldest son, Bo, it was freaking hilarious. Like right when Reddick parked the car, Bo just climbed up. He just climbed straight up to the top of the car. It looked like one of the pit crew members was like, "Get down. You're not supposed to be up there. Get down." Like it looked like one of the pit crew members was telling him to get down. He's like, "No, no, no. I'm gonna stay up here. This is time. This is when I celebrate. This is my thing." And he's on top of the car, and Reddick pops out the car. He's like, "Hey, Bo, yeah, let's celebrate." While Tyler Reddick is doing his interview, I see Bo in the background jumping up and down with the super red face because he's just so excited. Just, it was awesome. And then Reddick's interview was great, always. I really like Tyler Reddick. Michael Jordan, another thing from Michael Jordan's interview, he also said something along the lines of like, "Oh, this is a new era." I know it's not what he said. I'm paraphrasing there, but he pretty much said this is a new era for NASCAR. I liked Bubba Wallace on the 2311 social media coming to congratulate him on the front straightaway, saying, "I'm so sick of you, I'm so sick and tired of you fucking winning all the time." He said something like that. It's just, I loved everything about it. I don't know if I necessarily want Reddick to win 4 in a row, but him breaking history, we're being talked about by many different sports people around X and around the internet in general. Like Robert Griffin III was a special guest for 2311 racing at Circuit of the Americas, and he's been talking very, very highly of NASCAR over the last couple of days. Hasn't even made just one post, but he's made a bunch of posts, and I'm a big fan of RG3, so that's been pretty cool to see. And he's not the only one. Like Magic Johnson, once again, congratulating Michael Jordan. There's a lot of people out there and a lot of different sports outlets that are getting on this story, and it made it even more impressive because he had to hold off SVG, Shane Van Gisbergen, to do it. And I really liked that Michael Jordan and Reddick acknowledged that they had to beat the best to win this race. I also like the fact that Michael Jordan gave some credit to Denny Hamlin, because I think there's some casual NASCAR fans out there that think Michael Jordan is the only person and the only person behind 2311 racing. And Michael Jordan said something like, "Well, I'm just the one that pays the bills and watch the races. Everything else, that's all Denny. That's all Denny." And Denny's done so much for that team, and I'm glad Denny got his flowers. It was very, very well deserved. And I'm just a big fan of all of it, man. I wouldn't say I'm the biggest Tyler Reddick fan, but just the story of the whole thing, breaking history. I personally have never been so happy to be a NASCAR fan since I was a little kid, just because we're getting talked about so much. We're actually in the pop culture zeitgeist right now, and that's really cool. It's something I haven't seen since we had Jeff Gordon and Dale Jr. and Jimmy Johnson and Tony Stewart and Kevin Harvick and the Biff and Matt Kenseth and all these really popular guys, and they all left. They all left the sport. They all retired. I know Jimmy's still kind of hanging around, but all those other guys retired. And ever since then, NASCAR's been struggling to find some stars, some people out there. And it's crazy to say this, but honestly, I do think this. Tyler Reddick is becoming a household name around the whole United States of America right now. Not just with NASCAR fans, but with just people in general. Like random people out there probably know exactly who Tyler Reddick is. Oh, the guy that races for Michael Jordan. Oh yeah, him. He's badass. You know, like people know who Tyler Reddick is now. He's a well-known person in the United States right now, which is very, very cool. Everything that's going on with NASCAR. Well, now that I've gone through my little spiel, I want to get the boys' opinions on Tyler Reddick breaking history and holding off SVG. I guess we'll start with Tyler on this one, because obviously Tyler had the bold take of Tyler Reddick not doing well this year. I think you might need to apologize a little bit better this time or something, Tyler, because I don't think it worked. I think he was like, "No, I don't believe you." I think that's what Reddick was going through Reddick's mind when he heard you say that. He's like, "I don't believe you, Tyler. I don't believe you. I gotta prove this to Tyler. The other two were super speedways. This takes real skill." You know, I really felt like that. But Tyler, how personally have you felt about these first couple of races for 2311?
Been absolutely beyond impressive, man. It's been cool to see because like we had a tough summer. We had a really tough summer as a whole, as NASCAR fans, as followers, as all of it. It was rough to see, and I think this is truly healing whatever division was built between all of that. I mean, you're always gonna have your NASCAR fans that aren't gonna like Jordan and being in the sport. You're always gonna have your NASCAR fans that have something to say about Bubba being on the team. You're always gonna have all of that. But Tyler winning is definitely changing the narrative for everybody. I mean, it's what everybody wanted. It's not. I don't think anybody ever really wanted to see not a win out of those guys, right? We all expected all year long. You can go back to my picks. I mean, there's probably 9, 10 times that I say Tyler Reddick's going to win that race, and he just doesn't, and doesn't do well, and it was
Yeah,
disappointing.
I remember.
So it was cool to see. It's cool to see him get these wins. I mean, the guy deserves it. He's a great figure in our sport, and if anybody's going to do back-to-back 3, it's cool to see somebody be able to reincarnate his own team owners' pictures, their own feelings, all of these things. It's really cool to see personally.
Yeah, it's great for our sport. It's great to see. I did like him reenacting essentially that pick with Jordan after Michael Jordan won 3 straight NBA finals. He has that very iconic picture where he's like this holding the trophy real close, you know. So I like that. I thought that was very cool, and everything that they've done I think is just fantastic. We're getting NASCAR's name out there more than ever right now. It's really cool to see. It's really cool to see. But Cory, how did you feel about the history making moment of Tyler Reddick and just the way NASCAR is going right now?
Man, it's great. I don't know how else to say it other than it's great. Because, like, I have a coworker who doesn't watch NASCAR, but he listens to me talk about it because he's a cool coworker. But he's a diehard Jordan fan. He's a huge Jordan fan. And this last 3 weeks, he's like, I know more about NASCAR ever than I've ever known, and I love it. And I text him the last 3 weeks after Tyler Reddick's gotten a win, and he's responded, "Hell yeah!" And like he's super hyped. And I showed him the photos of Michael Jordan on half the photo with his 3 championships, and then on the other half, it's still Michael Jordan with the 3 cup race winning trophies. And it's just like the the talk NASCAR is getting is what's making this awesome. Tyler Reddick went through a lot last year, bad year, family issues. And, like he deserves this, but the sport is getting so much promotion off of Jordan. And no one, some people don't want to admit that, but Jordan is a huge impact to the sport. And he's super real about it, like giving Denny all that credit. That was another thing I showed my coworker that he was like, dude, that's real. That's real. Like, I don't know, it's just awesome to see. You have Hoop Central posting the last lap of the finish
Yeah.
because they're talking about Jordan and Jordan's interview, and like you're just getting a lot of eyes on the sport in a good way for a race that a lot of people didn't think was super entertaining, but it had a great result that NASCAR will benefit off of.
Yeah, I thought it was a really great moment for the sport, and it's great to see. It's great to watch. It's great to see. Uh, I think it's just great for the sport. I don't really know what else to say. An amazing moment for the sport, getting that history making moment. And you have to keep in mind now Michael Jordan is always going to be in the history books, not just as a Daytona 500 champion with Tyler Reddick, but also being the owner of Tyler Reddick when he broke that record of being the first driver ever to win the first 3 races of the Cup Series season. So I think it's great for our sport to see something like that. It's also great for Reddick with everything you just mentioned. We've talked about it the last couple of weeks on Hit the Pace Car with Tyler Reddick's issues last season, both on and off the track. He struggled on the track, and he obviously had all the health issues with his youngest son Rookie that he had to go through, and I think that's ultimately why he had so many issues on the racetrack was because of that. So it's just a great story, no matter what way you really want to break it down or look at it. And obviously the court case, which is something we haven't even really mentioned this episode, the court case obviously as well. It's crazy to see. It's crazy to see. And there's some people out there like, oh, they got it rigged. They got it rigged for Tyler Reddick to win 3 straight races. Everybody got their tinfoil hats on, just trying to ruin the moment. They're just butthurt because their favorite driver didn't win or whatever. And it's like, I forget who made the point, and it's like that's 100% true. Then why didn't Danica Patrick win a race? Why didn't Dale Earnhardt Jr. ever win a Dale Earnhardt Jr. never won a championship? Like that should end it right there. Dale Earnhardt Jr. never won a championship. If they didn't rig it then, they're not going to rig it now. So I don't get it. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How did you feel about Tyler Reddick breaking history in a wonderful moment for NASCAR. And can he make it 4 in a row? Let me know in the comments. Yeah, I
I
think
do have to say though,
What's up?
he makes it 4 in a row, and NASCAR confiscates that car and tears it down inch by inch. I promise that.
Oh, I think they were. I would assume they're probably already doing that. I would assume they're probably already doing that, or no?
I'm not sure, but I feel like 4 in a row, and they tear down that car in a way they've probably never tear down a car in their lives. Not since, I don't know, Jeff Gordon's T-Rex car.
Oh yeah, yeah. That could happen. That could definitely happen. I think they would probably do that already, personally, but maybe not. Because I think we've only had, I think, 2 drivers win 4 in a row: Jeff Gordon and Jimmy Johnson. I think we've only had, maybe Mark Martin did it back in the day too, and obviously Richard Petty. But I'm excluding back then because Richard Petty, I think, won like 10 races in a row or 15 or something stupid like that. Because the way that time of NASCAR was, it was like, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. That's why Richard Petty won so many races, not just because he's a great driver, but also because that's just the way NASCAR was back then. But let's move on from COTA and let's look ahead to the future as we look ahead to the upcoming weekend at Phoenix Raceway. Let's quickly go through the Phoenix weekend schedule and the Cup Series facts and the weekend facts overall. Let's start with the weekend schedule for Phoenix Raceway. On Thursday, we have the General Tire 150 at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Fox Sports 1. This will also be a combination race with the ARCA West division. So you'll see drivers from that ARCA West division like Haley Deegan in the field on Thursday night. On Friday at 7 p.m., you have O'Reilly Auto Parts Series practice on the CW app, immediately followed by qualifying. You also have IndyCar Series practice and qualifying a little bit earlier on in the day. On Saturday, you have Cup Series practice starting at noon on Prime Video, immediately followed by qualifying. And then at 3 p.m., you have the Good Ranchers 250 on Fox. That is the IndyCar Series race because it is the Desert Double, as the IndyCar Series is sharing Phoenix Raceway with the Cup Series, O'Reilly Series, and the ARCA Menards Series this week. And then the night race is the GovX 200 at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on the CW. I personally thought it was a very big missed opportunity. I really think these 2 races should have flip-flopped. I think the Indy cars would be a lot cooler under the lights, plus with viewership, because most NASCAR fans are on the East Coast, while most IndyCar fans are either in the Midwest or on the West Coast. So I think that was a big mistake on their part, in my opinion. But it was probably TV that ended up making that call, not NASCAR or Phoenix Raceway. That was probably a Fox deal right there. And then on Sunday at 3:30 p.m., we have the Straight Talk Wireless 500 on Fox Sports 1 for the NASCAR Cup Series. So a packed full weekend. And now let's get to some weekend facts. We have the Straight Talk Wireless 500 for the Cup Series. The stages end at lap 60, 185, and it's a 312 lap event. Phoenix Raceway is located just outside of Phoenix in Avondale, Arizona. It's a 1-mile speedway. It opened up back in 1964. There used to be many different racetracks. It used to be more of a motorsports facility back in the day, but now it's just a 1-mile dog leg oval. And the first time the Cup Series ever raced there was in 1988 in November, when Alan Kulwicki ended up winning his first of 2 races at Phoenix Raceway, and where he debuted the Polish victory lap. One of the most iconic celebrations in NASCAR was debuted back in 1988 at Phoenix Raceway. The active win leader at the racetrack is Joey Logano with 3 victories. And then last year's winners were Christopher Bell in the spring and then Ryan Blaney on championship weekend. The notable entries for the weekend in the Truck Series is off this week, plus next week. The next time we'll see the Craftsman Truck Series is at Darlington for Throwback Weekend or whatever they're going to call it. I'm not sure if it's going to be really much of a throwback weekend this time around. We have the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series entries. We have Chandler Smith driving the number 5, so we'll actually have more than one Ford in the field this week. Brent Cruz makes another start as his upcoming 18th birthday is coming very soon. It sounds like he will not be able to race Las Vegas and potentially miss one other race as well because of his age. He doesn't turn 18 for a couple more weeks still. Then you have Raja Caruth driving the number 32 because William Byron is taking over the number 88 for this weekend. So Raja Caruth filling out the rest of his races over at Jordan Anderson. And then you have Daniel Dye driving the number 52. And then in the Cup Series, you have Austin Hill driving the number 33 for RCR. And the weekend weather report. On Friday, it looks like all 3 days looks like it's going to be clear. We're not going to get any rain. But on Friday, it looks like it's going to be much cooler than Saturday. And then Saturday looks like it's going to be a good amount cooler than Sunday. As Sunday around race time, it could potentially be anywhere from 85 to almost 90 degrees outside on Sunday. All right, now that we've gone through the facts, we've gone through the schedule, I want to get the boys' thoughts on Phoenix. I guess we'll start with Tyler on this one. How are we feeling about this desert double this weekend, Tyler? And how do we overall just feel about Phoenix Raceway as a facility and the racing?
I'm a huge fan of Phoenix Raceway. I mean,
show off the
personally,
jersey.
they've
Show
done
off the
some
jersey.
great.
You got the jersey. Look at the jersey, y'all. You got that's a badass jersey. You got the championship thing on the sleeve and everything. That's a badass jersey.
Raceway.
That's a badass baseball
Championship,
jersey.
yeah.
I would have bought one, but it was like what, like $70 or something like that. How much was it again?
$100, and
Yeah,
then
see, fuck
last year
that.
they had them in white for $150.
That's
was like,
horrible. And white's gonna get ruined, but it's still cool.
Yeah.
It's still cool.
It's sick. It's definitely sick. But yeah, no, I love Phoenix Raceway, man. They have some of the best facilities. They've updated a lot of things in the last 10 years. I mean, parking itself, they've gotten down to a pretty good science. I'm not saying you're gonna make it out of there in a split second, but they've got it pretty worked out there. I mean, Phoenix Raceway has definitely done their homework on how to hold those races. Their camping's out of this world. I believe you were saying something this weekend about some bull riding or some crap, so it's gonna be some cool shit going on this weekend for sure.
Yeah, I do want to note that real quick because if you are camping at Phoenix Raceway this year and you've camped at Phoenix Raceway before, where the old Walmart used to be, where the shopping is, and if you've never camped there before, it's kind of in the center of the camping area, not too far away from the racetrack. They're actually going to be holding like some bull riding out there on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. They'll be having some bull riding, and I think you have to pay for a ticket for that. I think it's around $10-15, something like that. Not too expensive. But then after that, if you don't want to go to the bull riding, they will have free concerts every night except for Sunday over there in the center of the camping area. So that's something to watch out for. Could be quite a fun time out there, especially with the camping area right across with the name I won't name right across the street. So it's gonna be party leading into another party potentially. So it's gonna be a lot of fun out there. But Cory, how do we feel about Phoenix Raceway, the Desert Double, and how do we also feel about the facility of Phoenix Raceway itself?
Man, I'm excited to get over there in 2 days. I'm excited to see my first ever IndyCar race. That'll be
Yeah.
badass. I'm really excited for that. I think last year's racing at Phoenix was a lot better than the year before. The tires and what they've done has made it a little bit more interesting. And the facility itself is awesome. It's other than not letting you bring beer into the track, it's awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's nothing else I can really say. I've gotten a lot of cool experiences there, being able to drive on the track, walk on the track, pre-race, post-race. Like it's just an awesome facility in and around, and the camping's awesome. And I feel like with this live music and bull riding, Phoenix is going above and beyond to promote this race and make the experience awesome. So I'm ready for this week.
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for this weekend. I'm very excited to see my very first IndyCar series race. I'm very pumped about that. It's probably the number one thing I'm looking forward to for the entire weekend. I'm very excited about that. Yeah, I think the bull riding concert thing, I think that's really smart because I've been to a bunch of camping areas and the campers are very cool at Phoenix. It's definitely not, it really just depends on what you like. I personally, when I go into the camping area, I like more of a party lively atmosphere and some more like just the family friendly sort of atmosphere. It really just depends on what you like. And I would say Phoenix Raceway is one of the more family friendly camping areas in the sport. And then at the facility itself, before I went to Circuit of the Americas last year, I considered Phoenix Raceway to be the best looking motorsports facility I have been to, one of the most state of the art motorsports facilities I have been to, and I would probably put it second, right in front of Las Vegas Motor Speedway, because Las Vegas Motor Speedway is great as well. And the main thing I like about Las Vegas Motor Speedway is that there's multiple different tracks in the same facility, but when you actually get into the primary speedway, the infield's great, but I'm talking about more on like the grandstands, the way everything's set up, the way you can move around and this and that. I think Phoenix Raceway is fantastic. You can tell they put a lot of money into that facility over the last couple of years with that big deal they had with ISM a couple of years ago, and that's why it got renamed ISM Raceway there for a couple of years, was because of the big deal that they had with the racetrack, which really helped the racetrack and built it into what it is right now. So I really like the facility. The racing isn't necessarily the greatest. I would agree with you, Cory. I think ever since they decided, well, not since they decided, but since Goodyear decided to bring some different tires to the racetrack, I think that's greatly improved the racing, and I expect this weekend to be very similar to the fall race that we had for the championship last year, which was overall a very entertaining race. It was good racing throughout most of the field all day long. So I expect something very similar to that we had in the fall last year, and I'm looking forward to the weekend. But let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about Phoenix Raceway? And also, are you going to be at Phoenix Raceway this weekend? Let me know in the comments. All right, now that we've gone through our whole entire show, let's get down to the finisher, and that is going through our weekly picks. So here's an update on our weekly picks. Of course, Cory, he has 10 points at the moment in last after picking Connor Zilisch. Connor Zilisch got a 14th place finish, so Cory only got 1 point for the week. And then we look over at myself. I ended up getting some pretty good points with Shane Van Gisbergen getting me the weekly win, but he didn't get me the win. So I ended up getting 6 points because I won. I got the weekly win. No, not 6 points, 3 points. So I'm confusing race win with weekly win right now. So my bad. Weekly win with the 3 points plus getting the 2 bonus points on getting the top 5 moves me up to 12 points so far on the year. So I'm second in the standings. And I was hoping in those last couple of laps that Tyler was going to get past and move back to 6th. But Michael McDowell ended up getting a 5th place finish, giving Tyler 2 bonus points on top of his already 2 points for finishing second in our weekly picks. So Tyler has 15 points, so he would pick last. I have 12 points. I would pick second. And then Cory has 10 points, so he would pick first in week 3 of an 8-race series. Cory, of course, already used up his Hail Mary bonus in week 1 out of 8 by picking Carson Hocevar, which worked out very well for him in that first week. And me and Tyler have yet to use up our Hail Mary bonus. And I will be saving the Hail Mary bonus discussion until after we make our weekly picks. So we'll go through our weekly picks first, and then I'll be asking myself plus Tyler if we want to do our Hail Mary bonus. So we will start with Cory on this one. Cory, who is your pick to win the Straight Talk Wireless 500?
The mustache man himself, Ryan fucking Blaney.
RFB, you heard it here. Ryan Blaney, the driver of the number 12 for Team Penske and Ford. That is Cory's pick to win this weekend at Phoenix. And I was prepared. I was more prepared this time as I wasn't a couple of weeks ago when I wanted to pick Rowdy for the 500. I had a main pick and I had a backup pick, and luckily Cory took my backup pick, as my pick is the driver of the number 20 for Joe Gibbs Racing, Christopher Bell, to win at Phoenix Raceway. He's had a lot of success at the racetrack, and he won this race last season. And Tyler, obviously, if you're going to make your Hail Mary pick, wait until after this, but who is your weekly pick for Phoenix?
Hey, Mr. Willie B to turn around his season.
I think that's a really good pick. William Byron, I think, is pretty successful at Phoenix Raceway. So Tyler has decided to pick the driver of the number 24 for Hendrick Motorsports, Willie B. Billiam Byron, to win at Phoenix Raceway this weekend. And I got to ask Tyler, are you going to pull your card and use your Hail Mary bonus this week?
Oh, save it for Vegas.
All right, you heard it here first. Tyler's not going to use his Hail Mary bonus, and I will not as well. I will be saving my Hail Mary bonus. I got a couple in mind for a little bit later in the series, so I will not be using my Hail Mary bonus this week as well. So the only one that so far has used their Hail Mary bonus was Cory at Atlanta, where he picked Carson Hocevar. So just to go through our picks one more time, Cory has decided to pick Ryan Blaney. I have decided to pick Christopher Bell, and then Tyler has picked William Byron. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Who is your pick to win the Cup Series race at Phoenix? Also, let us know who you think is going to win the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series race and the IndyCar Series race at Phoenix Raceway this weekend. All right, and that will end up doing it for our show. Obviously, tune in next week, whether you're listening on Spotify or watching on YouTube. So like, comment, subscribe, comment on anything we talked about here today. Maybe even comment on some things we may have missed, because we can only do this show for so long, so we can't talk about literally everything that happened during the weekend. We can't talk about literally every little news story. So if there's anything that we missed in this discussion, lay it down in the comments, and I or one of us will respond to you on YouTube. But I'm going to send it to the boys now for last word. Tyler, any last words you got to say to the people?
Man, enjoy Phoenix. If you're out here, enjoy the weather, and if you can, catch some of these spring training games.
There you go. Spring training. I want to go to a spring training game. We should go to one. We should all go to one this year. I would love to go to one. That would be awesome. I like baseball. Baseball's, at least in person. On TV, it can get boring, but I like watching it in person. We got the World Baseball Classic coming up here too, so got a lot of baseball coming up, a lot of baseball. But Cory, any last words you got for the people?
Nothing else other than enjoy the duel in the desert.
There you go, short and sweet. All right, so everybody go enjoy Phoenix Raceway this weekend. I'm Trackside Larry. They're Cory and Tyler. We're the Pacecar boys, and we're saying peace.